Assemblyman Heath Flora, thank you so much for making time for us today.
It's great to see you, Ashley. Well,
I want to start with the State of the State address and the Republican response I know we saw focused on education and potentially a new way of doing things. But what was your reaction with some of what the governor had to say?
I thought it was an interesting, very interesting, quite frankly. I think there was a lot that he said. Some of it is a little bit concerning. I think we didn't quite address, the budget issues. I know we have budget today, but when we talk about homelessness, when we talk about education, we have all these grandiose ideas. We didn't really get into the meat and potatoes of how we're going to actually implement all of those things. We talk a lot about these great ideas, but then when we actually comes to implementation, it becomes a different story. And sometimes I feel we fall short of that. It's hard to implement things. I mean, California is a very complex state. We have from the Oregon border, the Mexico border, and everything in between, and all those regions are different. So the governor is and does have a hard job, but I think we have to be very, very cautious about how we talk about things and kind of the expectations that we give to our constituents.
You were the budget vice chairman in the assembly, and I wonder what your reaction was to the governor's top line presentation on Friday. I mean, he didn't give the presentation as director of finance did, but what was your main takeaway?
I think we got some problems, and again, it's if we're not honest with the numbers, if we're not honest with the problems, it's going to be really hard to find a solution. And I think that's just my biggest takeaway. It's hard to believe the numbers that they threw out. It just simply is.
And even in a scenario where the state, what he's proposing is to grow the size of the state budget by about $30 billion, and we didn't see a plan to address these big structural deficits in the years to come, Joe Steffenshaw said that he's not waiting for the next governor to figure that out. That's not what he's doing. He's just going to wait until May. Your reaction to that?
Just not sure why we're waiting until May. I mean, I think if we have a plan, we should tell people what the plan is. If we don't have a plan, then we're kind of building a plane while we're flying it. And I think that's where we get ourselves in trouble. I'm all about growing the state budget. I think you grow the state budget by making our state business friendly. There's a lot of businesses that are leaving. There's a lot of things that we could do to cut bureaucratic red tape and allow businesses to thrive that are not just Silicon Valley. And that was one of the things that was very interesting in the State of the State was he said a lot about Silicon Valley. And he mentioned Central Valley Ag, but the ag community feels very left out. They feel very taken advantage of. They feel really kind of cast aside. And so I think we have to start broadening our horizons on who we view as important and what businesses we tend to prop up.
Is that something that could be done in the budget, or how could that be done?
I think through the budget or legislation. I think it could go either way. I think when it comes to ag, there's just so many red tape when it comes to pesticide uses and how we farm. Cost of fuel, cost of diesel. Which is also something interesting that he didn't mention yesterday in the State of the State was the fuel price and what the plan is there. Meanwhile, Valero and all these refineries are leaving the state. So there was a few holes that I thought we could have probably closed.
You mentioned Valero, and actually while I have you on that topic, Valero, the governor did say this week that they're in talks with Valero and that while the refinery might not completely shut down, it will sit idly and the company will still provide fuel. Do you have any insight on that? What do you make of that?
That's not what I'm hearing. Again, I don't know a lot of the details, but conversations that we've had with folks yesterday, that is not what I'm hearing.
Can you shed any light on your conversation with?
No,
Okay.
honestly. I mean, again, it goes back to just sometimes there's just information is not always shared, I won't say in like a truthful way, but sometimes there's facts and details that are left out. And the folks I'm talking through within the oil industry, they're still expecting a shutdown. And so I don't know what the governor's talking about there.
Is oil one of the biggest things that we can expect Republicans to push further on this year, even though there was a little action taken to allow more drilling, more permitting in Kern?
I think you're going to see certain Republicans, based on their districts, certainly run legislation to deal with that to help, reduce the cost of fuel. But I think, cost of living is really going to be a lot of what we focus on. The governor doesn't really love the word affordability, just because I think, and I do agree it is overused, but cost of living in the state we have to address. The Central Valley is just getting hammered, and it's time that we kind of really have an honest conversation about how much it costs to live in the state of California.
What else are Republicans going to push for this year?
I think it's just going back to the crime, public safety, homelessness. I think you're going to see a lot of us on accountability. The state audit ran that, the report, and there's a lot in there that needs to be addressed, from EDD to CalWorks or CalFresh, and all of those things. There's a massive amounts of money that's being misappropriated. And I think we really want to look into that. And it's not just a Republican thing either. I mean, some of my Democratic colleagues think that's smart as well. So I look forward to working with them on it.
So in terms of figuring out what, as you've said, is misappropriated, what does that look like specifically? Are you going to dig into things yourselves? Are you going to try to have hearings? What is that?
I mean, we have to have hearings, with the Democrats' permission. I think, yes, we are going to look into things ourselves, but, the state audit, they did it. And we've been digging into that audit report and really figuring out, again, a lot of this stuff is not just like necessarily fraud, but when you have people that go on these rolls and they are part of these programs, but we never go back and clean those rolls off and we're continuing to just pay, we need to look at that because there's a lot of money that's just being misappropriated. And when you have a deficit like we do, those dollars could be spent in, more useful ways.
Have you had productive conversations with the speaker? I mean, now that you're minority leader, have you two talked about any of this? Any possibility that Democrats and Republicans can work on some of this oversight?
Yeah, we have. I've met with his staff earlier this week, actually, about this very topic. And I think Republicans, we're going to start pushing out this narrative of protecting the promise. We as elected officials make a lot of promises to Californians. And we've passed a lot of legislation, some of it good, some of it bad. But I really do think we have to go back and see what legislation's on the books and make sure that we're protecting the promises that we made to our constituents. So that was the conversation that we had with the speakers, protecting the promise.
What is your overall message to Californians in your role as the new Republican minority leader with this upcoming year of lawmaking and trying to figure out taxpayer dollars?
I just think it's, from us on the Republican side, I mean, it's just going to be brutally honest on what's going on in Sacramento. And all we can do is just get that information out to our constituents. A lot of times, we get the privilege and the honor to serve as elected officials under this beautiful white building, and it's a privilege. And I think we have to get that message out to the constituents. Sometimes we as electeds, we become very insular, and we just keep everything aside. And I think we have to stop with that. So I think you're going to see a lot more messaging come out of the Republican Party to our constituents across the state, making sure everybody understands what is going on, because politicians need to be held accountable. I mean, it's just the reality of it, and not in a negative way necessarily, but it's time that we get back to that.
Was one actually other question. The governor this week gave his state of the state, didn't provide the budget presentation though for the first time. I mean, outside of emergency circumstances, he has had Joe step in for him, but or Director Stephen Shaw, I should say. But the possibility of the governor running for president, does that make this year potentially challenging, even more so for Republicans?
It could. I think it's probably more challenging, honestly, for my Democratic colleagues. Republicans, we kind of know where we're headed, right? And sometimes the governor is very sporadic on where he's moving, what he wants to do, right? And I think it's going to be challenging just to try to figure out the direction that he wants to go. And so I think Republicans, we're very fixed on how we're going to handle this year as far as, protecting the budget as best we can, making sure we continue to work on crime and homelessness and, the state dollars go where they need to go. That's kind of our lane. And the Dems might have a little bit more of a challenge kind of identifying that lane as well.
All right. Assemblyman Heath Floor, I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.